Item 4 goes to petitions. There are no petitions to present today, which brings us to public input. There were four requests received, 3 accepted. Unfortunately, one was declined on the basis that Standing Order 7.7.4, there'd been a separate public hearings or consultation process and a decision made in respect of that. And unfortunately, that doesn't allow much room for manoeuvre after we check with Auckland Transport that indeed that consultation process had taken place. So that brings us to the first presenter today.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just in respect of that ruling, without going into particular detail around it, my understanding is that part of the consultation process, a very significant part, has still not taken place. And there are other mitigating factors. I can appreciate that the decision has been made, but I just point out that sometimes there is contrary information that's not always available to yourself or officers. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. In this instance, we did seek clarification from Auckland Transport on that matter, but willing to look into that further, Councillor Walker. Sorry, Mr.
Chair. You've accepted a comment here, which I have to say is incorrect, and I think we need to be guided by Auckland Transport, Mr. Chair. And I contend the comment that's just been made by Councillor Walker. Okay.
That's exactly what I did say, that we sought clarification, so I don't think we need to prolong that matter any further. So we'll welcome to the front desk Neil Robertson, and Neil, you're talking about the train service to Huapai, and as Neil makes his way up, we'll there is a PowerPoint accompanying this, and if councillors are having difficulty online reading it in Nexus, we did arrange for copies to be emailed through that will make it easier to read if you want to look at your emails. Welcome, Neil. The floor is yours. We look forward to your presentation. Press the talk button and away you go.
We've got it now. Okay, this is just a part of an overhead which was going to be presented somewhere else, but we're just going to take the top topic there, which is trains to Huapai. If we could just click forward. Okay, so the trains to Huapai, this is something that we're really campaigning for because we can't see any real reason why it shouldn't be. There's a railway from Swanson to Huapai. There's 2 stations on that railway that are unused. There's the Waitakere one there, the next slide, and the Huapai one there, totally unused. And the next slide will show you that there's a bridge that's just been built over that one there. And to the right of that bridge there, if you go to the next slide, there is 1,200 homes being built there for about 5,000 people. And I think that bigger development up there is probably a rest home place. So we can now get walk up to that railway station with that bridge, which is very handy. Currently the public transport there is a bus that leaves at about 7 in the morning and gets into town at about 9:15. But if you want to catch a bus to go to Swanson to catch the train, it'll take you even longer to get there. So it's pretty unsatisfactory. Next slide, please. Okay, there are 8 of these ADL rail cars in storage at the moment. They ran the shuttles between Papakura and Pukekohe before they were withdrawn to work on the electrification out there. These could actually be reserviced for this job. Now, I spoke with Minister Wood about this, and he asked me through the RMTU to write a report on the feasibility of this. So we put a report together. I've actually got it here. I think I gave it to you, John, for pre-reading for everybody so that you could actually see it. And there's all the CAPEX and the OPEX and so forth, and all of the detail of how the operation could run. I think it's got an annual budget of about $2.3 million, which won't break the bank. There's a bit of CAPEX on top of that. Our engineers, and we've used consulting engineers as well, have actually designed fire suppression for these machines, as well as a front door egress to overcome any problems with the tunnel at Waitakere. We've also costed the removal of the tunnel at $30 million, if you're interested. That could actually also bring the road down to that level too, and be big improvements for the area. So we could actually run those for the service. We worked it out that it would be roughly half-hour peak time and hourly thereafter, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that would be a fairly good service. Next slide, please. And we would actually do the swap like that at Swanson. Next slide, please. Now, that's the road that comes out of Huapai. It's a 2-lane road. It's carrying currently 36,000 cars per day. Next slide, please. The transmission gully is carrying 35,000 cars. The Waikato Expressway is carrying 20,000 cars. Puhoi to Warkworth will be carrying 24,000 cars. I can't understand why we are actually putting so much money into these areas here and neglecting Kumeu Huapai. We're just turning our back on them. Next slide, please. That's AT's solution. A light rail sometime way off into the future. Yeah. Basically, it's doing nobody anything. At the moment, what we should be doing, and I was at the regional public transport planning meeting recently, and a guy from Kiwi Rail said that it's a freight line and we can't put trains on there at the moment. It's not. There's a freight train that goes up pre-dawn and one comes back at about 11 o'clock at night. So this is the perfect time, and it's not going to change for 3 years at least, 3 to 5 years before that timetable increases. And in the meantime, I think we could run a trial of using these DMUs running from Huapai to Swanson to improve the lot of the people in that area. Don't forget that it's not just Huapai and Kumeu, which is getting up to around about the 10,000 plus population, but the surrounding areas, Muriwai, Helensville, Waimaku, all of these areas, even some people perhaps down from Riverhead. The other thing is that it's actually a legitimate way of getting from Huapai to Henderson and to New Lynn, even if you're not going to the CBD. So I think that I'd like to see a lot more cars off the road. And well, we'll go to the next slide. And who wants it? Action Kumeu, which is the Residents Association, are campaigning for it. Property developers want it. One actually offered us a park and ride by the station. Fletcher Building wanted it, made a presentation to the MOT Select Committee asking for it. Many public meetings have pulled good attendance levels and illustrate good support for the rail option. In fact, I've never seen anybody come to our public meetings that wasn't for it. Environmentalists want it to reduce carbon emissions. Road safety campaigners support it. The local people want it to avoid the extreme commuting that they are subjected to. These trains could eventually be a link to the proposed light rail system, so it should be seen as not a temporary fix. That's probably about it.
Thanks very much.
Tony's just got one more thing to say, I think.
Yep, if I can get this on. Here we go. Just with regards to the travel between Papakura and Otahu and that general area, when the rail line is going to go down for some considerable time, they're talking about rail buses, which are never a very good solution for that sort of thing. When you consider that the stations along that line are some of the heaviest used stations on the rail network in Auckland, and I think that we need to be looking for another solution, whether it's running a single line of, even if it's diesel, but single line transport through from Papakura to Otahu during the period that they're doing the reconstruction down there.
Thanks very much, Tony, for adding that in. We've got a few questions here, folks. We'll we'll try to give as many, but we obviously can't have everyone have a shot unless people keep it very succinct. So the first councillors up are Councillor Baker and Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, guys. Just in regards to have you had, with your discussions with the Minister, have you had a discussion in regards to the hybrid trains? And so it's something that David Warburton, as the Chair of, or CEO of Auckland Transport, did a few years ago. And I note that on the 29th of April, it was announced that they are looking at hybrid trains in Wellington with 90%, according to the media, funding from government. I don't know whether they'd fit through the tunnel, but would also be a pretty good cross-regional thing. Have you spoken to the Minister? I have, but I'd be interested to see whether you have.
I haven't actually subsequently, but we did, this council actually put in a request a few years back for something like that for this service. It was turned down by Waka Kotahi, and last time I was here, we all agreed that we would all talk to the Minister. I have been talking to the Minister since about that. Rather than going for the hybrid, he liked this idea. So that's what we went for.
Councillor
So,
Turner?
well, this is what he asked for. He asked for this as a feasibility. But I agree. I think, you know, it would be quite nice if we could actually order some on the back of that. It would be good.
Ken?
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really supportive of this, and it's important for the Waitakere, Henderson, Massey, New Lynn area as well. You know, down that motorway and stuff. I'd written some things down just as you were talking, like the cost of removing the tunnel compared to the cost of widening. Is it?
Yeah, okay. About $100 million to bring it up to world standard.
To widen it.
Yeah.
And only 30 million to remove it.
Cheaper.
Okay. Double tracking. I know this is a test you're talking about and stuff, but the single line is the root problem, is it not?
Sort of. There is crossing loop at Waitakere, and we've actually worked out a timetable that would actually give us the equivalent of, it'd be slightly uneven, it wouldn't be bang on every half an hour. It would be probably 25 minutes and then 35-minute changes and so forth. And it would be based on the fact that in peak hour, all the passengers would be going that way, and there wouldn't be any ability to get off at Waitakere. To solve that problem, we'd have to put a crossover point in the middle and extend the platform. It would be quite simple to do that. And that would actually solve that problem. We've actually costed it to actually go all the way from Swanson to Huapai electrified and double track. That's $200 million. So
I've got lots of other questions. Could you please just make sure we contact with each other so that...
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. So I'm noticing your priority campaigns. Why wasn't it a priority, in the opinion of your organisation, to look at the State Highway 16, which has a catchment population of well over 100,000 people in Te Atatu, Massey, etc.?
Highway 16, it's on the plan to be motorwayed, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be, difficult. I'm just saying you've got a list of priority campaigns. I'm wondering why that's not a priority campaign.
No, it's not.
Okay. I guess I can't take that any further, Chair.
Oh, well, no, okay. Yeah. They're a public organisation, I guess they've got their priorities they set themselves. Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Motorways aren't the solution to everything.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I find history really interesting, and I think back to 1998 when the then Mayor of Pukekohe, Heather Maloney, said that the people of Pukekohe would never use rail, and she refused to be part of those that wanted to be part of procuring the corridors for rail. It seems to me that what you are presenting in a modern day context is really the situation, that the dilemma for the people of Pukekohe back in 1998. So do you see parallels with the way in which these things have evolved?
Yeah, I think it's part of the Auckland's legacy of not actually using rail. And I think a lot of Aucklanders don't believe that we can do that. And that, as I say, roads are usually the solution, extend the motorways and things. Whereas, we can actually do a lot better sometimes by just utilising the rail properly. Yeah.
I think also that things have changed a lot since that time, to be fair. Up until the COVID situation, when it all went haywire, the usage of transport had increased dramatically. So things were working quite well. Pukekohe to Papakura, they wouldn't be electrifying the line between Pukekohe and Papakura if there wasn't a demand. So, and the traffic from Papakura into the city is huge. So I think that things have changed a little bit since 1998.
I think what I was trying to highlight is the fact that sometimes it just requires a little bit of leadership to kickstart these things.
I agree.
Okay, thank you for that. We will be forwarding the presentation and the study that Neil referred to towards Auckland Transport, and Auckland Transport officers are here in attendance, so that will come as a consequence of your presentation. We'll have to move on, folks. I think if there's anyone that wants any further questions, there are a few other councillors. You can perhaps take it up with Neil and Tony offline. Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move them. Yeah.
I did put a motion to, seconded by Councillor Feaster.
As you know, Councillor Walker, we can't make a decision as a consequence of public input. So it will follow the appropriate course with the appropriate advocacy from this committee, but we can't move that, I've been told by the committee.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Yeah, okay, moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Call up the next presenter today is Peter Dunlop and Simon Jones, who'll be talking about transportation to and from the ports of Auckland. I said it's Peter. He told me. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, my name's Peter Dunlop, and next to me is Simon Jones. The headline is as on the screen. I have prior knowledge of how Ports of Auckland works as being a former director, and I've always been interested in various options to remove the congestion and the substantial number of heavy trucks which pass through the edge of the CBD in and out of the port. The easiest part of running a port is taking the cargo on and off ships. The most difficult part is distributing it and receiving it into the port.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And look, in terms of this proposal, just a very brief summary of the parties behind this proposal. As I said, Peter is a former director of Ports of Auckland. I'm a former CE of SeaLink, the red car ferry operators. And as I said, we also have an Australian team who are behind this proposal as well.
As we all are aware, the part of the current discussions around the port, should it exist, should it be moved, should it be closed down, what should happen, this is all a medium-term project. However, at the moment, the congestion and the number of trucks coming in and out of the port continues to increase, and there is serious consequences which we'll get to. However, we're of the belief that there's a relatively simple way to remove the vast majority of these trucks directly in and out of the port, is by operating a shuttle feeder service from the port through the Tamaki River to a transfer facility at Highbrook, very close to the Southern Motorway.
Thank you, Peter. And look, here's a description. So if you look at this aerial map here, you can see Ports of Auckland at the top part of the diagram, and you can see the journey or the voyage from ports of Auckland down to, following the yellow marker line, down to Highbrook in East Tamaki. 80% of container traffic, freight volumes that come into ports of Auckland go south. They go to East Tamaki. So this is about using the sea as opposed to congesting inner city arterial, strategically important and congested roads.
A quick calculation on what happens is you've got one of these container barges, which is purpose-built, and I should mention they'll be electric, so not diesel, would replace approximately 60 large container trucks per voyage. So 60 trucks into the port and 60 trucks out. There's 120 fewer truck movements through the fringes of the CBD per voyage of a vessel, which can operate 24/7, and possibly we think possibly 4 voyages a day. So multiply 4 by 120, you're up to, over 600 roughly. So that's what we're looking at in terms of 4 containers.
Just a quick touch on what we see as being some key proposal benefits. Obviously, congestion estimated to cost Auckland $1.3 billion per annum. A huge contributor to that are slow-moving heavy trucks, reducing emissions. Even at a diesel level, the electric-powered barges are 4% of the emissions that would otherwise be focused on trucks. Reducing road deaths, serious injuries. Trucks and cars are what causes the most serious injuries. Defers need for huge investment in upgrading interior approach roads to the CBD Auckland, Spaghetti Junction. There are billions of dollars set aside potentially to accommodate increased traffic volumes. Another benefit here, by achieving this, by moving containers directly from the port instead of through the roads to East Tamaki, it frees up part of the port for alternative recreational and commercial use, and we're very confident it will also allow ports of Auckland to achieve its projected volume increases.
These figures here give you some comparisons between costs and between road and using feeder barges through to East Tamaki. They're relatively accurate and use some information from various public sources.
This is an example of it's called a Ropex cat, or it's a catamaran. It has a very shallow draft, around about 1.8 metres only. This vessel here, single vessel here, would take 102 cars. So at the moment, cars are moved out of ports of Auckland on the back of car transporters. We're simply saying those car transporters can stay within the port and drive directly onto this barge and this catamaran and drive directly out of this barge. It's a drive straight through vessel, but 102 cars instead of the alternative, which is thousands of truck movements through a week, gridlocking into up Stanley Street into Spaghetti Junction.
These figures are from some information obtained from Ports of Auckland. Auckland is primarily an import port. The exports are mainly on the smaller Pacific Island trades. The imports quite often come into Auckland and then are distributed from Auckland warehouses further south. So our estimate, based on the information, is that there are just under 900,000 container truck movements per year in and out of ports of Auckland, main terminal down at Ferguson. The expected growth of the port is approximately 5% per year. So we're talking in 30 years' time, that being in the region of 1.6 million truck movements in and out of the port. The current imported car volumes are approximately 250,000 cars. The information we have, there's the average is 4 cars per truck, which equates to roughly 100,000 truck movements in and out of the port per year. And as we've said, 80% of these movements go south. As an example, the two major vehicle logistics companies both have their terminals based in Highbrook and Manurewa. So they've got to take everything from the port down to exactly very close to Highbrook. There's also a significant volume of bulk which comes into Auckland currently, roughly 1 million tonnes, which is 80,000 truck movements. We've not really put that in the presentation because Winston Wallboards are moving their production to Tauranga in the next 6 months, and one would hope that the large volume of coal going into Huntly from Indonesia will reduce, and we understand that the target for it to disappear is approximately 2025.
Could you, don't mean to press you, but could you round up your presentation now, gentlemen, please?
Yeah.
Move it on.
Just go back one.
Yeah, so look, touching on, we don't need to run through these, but these this particular proposal aligns with many published Auckland Transport, Ports of Auckland and Auckland Council proposals, or should I say outcomes. We just see very, very strong synergy.
There's no real reason why this can't be progressed relatively quickly. There's obviously some infrastructure issues to be researched, and there's which include the Tamaki River, the Panmure bridges, the whatever. But we can't see any negatives at this point in having a very detailed investigation into the viability of operating this service, and we would hope to have the backing from the council and AT and Ports of Auckland to go ahead with us. Okay,
thanks very much for your presentation. Gentlemen, we'll give you a couple of quick questions now. Councillors Ferry, Simpson and Walker. Please make them precise.
Kia ora, thank you. What consideration has been given to the impact on other traffic in the harbour, in particular ferries? We have a lot of problems with that coordinating with cruise ships at the moment. So what impact do you think this might have in that space? Thank you.
Where the port is, the commercial port's located, that's to the east of where the cruise vessels operate, so there's no conflict. And because we're running across to the Tamaki River, we're not in the same routing as the Waiheke ferries. They take a different course across the harbour.
The Pine Harbour ferry, for example, and I'll plan to expand the ferry service. Anyway, just something worth considering. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, thanks. I think this sounds really great. I've got 2 quick questions for you. Time is money. How quickly can you get that ferry from A to B versus the time it takes to drive? I know it's more efficient, you get more on the barge, but just, I know that in the freight industry, time is money. And my second question is, Tamaki River is used quite a lot for students rowing. Are the ferries able to operate at night?
Yeah, the voyage time each way, we think would be, depending on speed restrictions, would be approximately 1.5 hours, 1.15, 1:30. And obviously in the Tamaki River there is a speed restriction. And secondly, that the vessels we're proposing are built to minimise wake. So obviously at a slower speed and with a good hull form, then weight coming off the vessels would be minimal with recreational vessels or rowing vessels or kayakers or whatever.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Walker?
Are there other ports that have a facility like this?
Sorry?
Are there other ports that have a facility like this?
Correct, yes there are.
Okay, thank you. This will be getting referred, like the last item, to Auckland Transport and the ports. There is a couple other councillors. If we could make our questions quick, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Philippina and Councillor Fully.
Chair, just I'm assuming it would go to Ports of Auckland as well. That's all. Thank you. Done.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for lateness, gentlemen. Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, because when I was on the Otara Papatoetoa local board, we were presented with something very similar that was supported by the previous mayor, Phil Goff, and it had been worked through somewhat by staff. So I'm wondering if this is the same project or is this a different project to that one?
No, it's not the same project because my understanding, and I could be wrong here, is that the vehicle companies, the auto logistics and car carrying companies, they had a rudimentary proposal sort of in play where they were looking to use barges just to move cars to East Tamaki, Highbrook, which is where their facilities are. We've in mind taken that but expanded it to involve containers as well.
Okay, all right. So I'll just then ask the same questions our local board asked back then. Were just concerns around whether you've looked at the effects on the waterways, the Tamaki estuary and the Ngāti Otara lake, and also the land that abuts those waterways, because when we looked at those plans, there were potential negative effects on the reserves that abut those waterways, and in particular the Ngāti Otara reserve that our local board area uses. Thousands of students and children use that on Saturdays and weekends for sports. And there was a potential for negative effects on that for any proposal to run barges. And this is an expansion of that. Have you looked into those negative effects to the environment?
We've looked at them, but we need obviously more input. But the way we see it is that the barges would go further up past where the reserve is. And there may be some dredging required so that we could actually use some of the dredging material to expand the footprint, to enable it to come out into the top end of the Tamaki River.
Yes, because there were concerns about the depth of the water and things like that as well. So it's good to know
the vessels are only very shallow. They're only 2.53 metres. So dredging would be insignificant, really, in the greater scheme of things.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the questions. As with the first presentation, there's some really good proposals here. So we will be sending it to Auckland Transport. I think there'll be an opportunity for us to dig down a bit deeper in detail. So we've got a motion to thank and to note that fact that this will be going to AT and Ports of Auckland. So moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Philippina. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Our final presenter in public input today is Liam Venter, and as Liam makes his way to the front desk, Liam will be talking about selecting the right mass transport system for Auckland. Welcome, Liam. You've got 5 minutes. Is there a PowerPoint accompanying this one? No, so Liam will just be speaking to it. You're familiar with the apparatus there, Liam. Welcome, and away you go.
Okay. It's been quipped that I want to talk about the Auckland Light Rail project and the alternatives. It's been quipped that the Auckland Light Rail project is the project that Aucklanders don't want and the rest of the country doesn't want to pay for. Why should Auckland councillors be scrutinising this project now? The government's paying for it after all. If Auckland Council are going to be unwilling participants in this project, you don't want to be unwitting too. Auckland ratepayers are taxpayers as well, so we contribute to all of the costs. We have congestion stifling Auckland's productivity that we must address. Distractions are not a good idea. There are real and significant costs that Auckland Council will need to find funding to meet for the project. Whether Auckland Council likes it or not, you and your CCOs, especially Auckland Transport and Panuku, will soon be wading knee-deep in this project at some considerable financial cost to the Council and ratepayers. The project will consume masses of Auckland Council resources, finances and focus. This is the largest infrastructure project ever attempted in New Zealand, by some margin. You won't be able to form even a thought without the Auckland Light Rail project in it. How much is the Auckland Council budgeted for this? The costs for the unfunded and ancillary projects to make this project functional will fall on Auckland Council and will soon be some percentage of the cost of this multi-billion-dollar project. I made a list of them, I won't go through it. The couple of key ones, though, is the integration with other transport systems in Auckland. We don't want an orphan. If we integrate whatever we do in new transport systems with existing ones, we get a result that is greater than the sum of the parts. If we don't, we end up with an orphan. There's a required functional infrastructure changes to support the change in use and patronage around every one of the proposed 18 stations. The Auckland Council will be meeting the bill for that. 14.6, 29.2, $50 billion. These are literally incomprehensible numbers. Most Aucklanders paying rates and mortgages on inflated property values between $1 and $2 million can comprehend $1 million. But $1 billion, $1,000 million is incomprehensible to us. These are extraordinary costs, so we need extraordinary achievements, relieving Auckland's stifling productivity congestion. Auckland Light Rail's business case talks of an expenditure of $14.6 billion at a P50 risk. Treasury took a sceptical but assumptive approach to the financial risk assessment and just doubled the figure to $29.2 billion. They gave it a P100. There is scant information in the business case which was only released under an OIA request, and it's still hidden away on the Auckland Light Rail project. Last time I looked, you couldn't navigate to it. You had to know it was there and use the search function to get to it. I've read through the business case, and much of it's been redacted, particularly around costings. I can see the risk of releasing information. Property developers with potentially privileged links into Panuku could gain considerable commercial advantage on the knowledge of the station locations and expected purchase cost of land and rights of access. Rights of access is a big issue. $1.72 million for the rights of access under the George Corpse building for the CRL project. Previous to that, the average paid was $69,000 across Auckland. Now that that's out there in the public knowledge, everybody knows what to ask for. 14.6, 29.2, $50 billion. If the goal was to get to and from the CBD to the airport, it would be cheaper to build another airport closer to the CBD. And Wayne could definitely sell the airport shares. Tommy Parker has advised Treasury's estimate of $29.2 billion was not considered in the business case and has acknowledged there is no business case if costs exceed the figure they worked with, $14.6 billion. Extrapolating from our most recent project, the 3.45 kilometre, 100% tunnelled CRL project, we can possibly project some expectations for the cost of light rail. Core infrastructure, approximately 13 kilometres of the 24-kilometre route will be tunnelled, nearly 4 times the distance of the $5.45 billion CRL tunnel project. That alone comes to $21.8 billion. This figure doesn't even begin to assess the other major costs of the rest of the project, including a Mangere harbour crossing, a further 12 kilometre of ground level track to the airport, etc., etc., etc. It is very unlikely the project can be completed for $29 billion, which is why I have injected the figure of $50 billion into the conversation. So what would we get if we go ahead? The indicative business case acknowledges there is no business case without housing intensification along the route. We are told it would take 6 to 8 years to build. We get a single route servicing an as yet unestablished demographic in 6 to 8 years that will provide no relief to our existing productivity, stifling congestion, or any of our existing demographics. We get a complete distraction and loss of focus on what we need to be doing now. No one would argue that our Northern Busway has been a huge success. A continued focus on building out our busways into a modern city-wide bus rapid transport system will cost less than a single route of the light rail project and continue providing us with relief as we build it. We need to encourage the government to stop wasting money on the light project now and put their offered investment into building out our bus rapid transport system. I have collated the characteristics, pros and cons of BRT versus light rail in the review I supplied yesterday. It is designed as an introductory primer to the conversations we need to be having now. Because my engineering qualifications, infrastructure design and provisioning experience are in an unrelated field, I have not attempted any engineering analysis in my review of options. Unfortunately, I collated and typed up the notes that I think have been disseminated and that I put together over the last few months, but I was collating them yesterday with a broken finger due to my own personal transport choices. And so it was a bit of a rush to get it for the presentation, but I do have an updated version of that if anyone wants to see it. But there's quite a bit of detail in it, and it would be a great primer for anyone wanting to know what are the pros and cons of each solution for Auckland. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Liam. Do we have some questions for Liam? Yes, Councillor Walker.
How do you see Auckland Light Rail will integrate with other transport systems?
It's a good question. I think I briefly mentioned that if we integrate whatever we do with the rest of the system, we get something that's greater than the sum of the parts. We have a problem with Auckland Light Rail. Currently, it's projected to be to have its final terminal at Wynyard Quarter, which is miles away from our other transport hubs. We need an interchange points between our existing CRL project, our ferry service, our future harbour crossing and things. We don't know what the future harbour crossing will be at this point, so we don't know where light rail should go at this point, so we don't even know what it's going to cost because we don't know where it's going. I would suggest that we have the Britomart parking building downtown that we're considering selling, and it would be premature to do that. It's beautifully located close to the Central Rail project, and no matter what, whether we went light rail or whether we went with building out our bus rapid transport network, that would make a great hub and interchange point because it's got walkways going across roads directly to the current downtown train station. So we need somewhere central for an interchange point, otherwise we can't integrate the system. So if we don't use the Britomart, what are we going to use? Where are we going to have this? Where are we going to put the hub where we interchange? So for integration, we need to be thinking a little bit further ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Question really is to Mr. Ventnor. What do you wish this council, this committee, how do you wish this council, this committee to respond to your presentation?
Good question. I think it's really important that we don't get distracted by a project that's probably going to have the plug pulled on it anyway. I think everyone's realised the Emperor's not wearing any clothes already, and I'm probably talking to the converted. But we need to get the government to stop, the council needs to talk to the government in the strongest possible terms and tell them what Aucklanders need, and encourage them to put their offer of investment into the areas that we need rather than perhaps a boondoggle.
Thank you. I just make the point, previous two public input items were referred on to Auckland Transport, and the chairman rightly ruled that matters subject to public presentation may not be debated. However, apart from shuttling them on to AT, we can ask our own Chief Executive to investigate matters raised. And I think if you look at the terms of reference of this committee, the matters raised, all of them, come under the ambit of Auckland Council, not just us as a sort of a retailer or front shop for AT, but as a strategic body in its own right. And so under the standing order, we may refer these items to the Chief Executive for investigation, and that would really mean our own transport strategy people to have a look at and consider. Thank you.
So Councillor Lee, of course, you're quite at liberty to move that very point in terms of the recommendations here. We've got to refer the presentation to Auckland Transport and the Auckland Council Transport Strategy Team.
I think so. Otherwise, they may as well cut out the middleman and go down the road and talk to the AT board.
All right. So we'll refer the presentation to Auckland Transport and the Auckland Transport Strategy Unit for consideration. Moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Liam, and thank you to all our presenters today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council.
Okay, proceeding with the meeting, ladies and gentlemen, and I would just say on that that feedback or response thus far, Auckland Transport have been very good, I think, in coming back to us with responses to presentations. So we will hope that it's more than just a pro forma move. It's actually something that has consequences conceivably for our agendas going forward. I know that's certainly the view of Councillor Fletcher. So that was public input, everyone. Thanks for your questions. We go to the agenda. Oh, sorry, we've just got a couple of formalities here before we do so. There is no local board input and there are no extraordinary items.